The story began with a signal. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a strange blip on a satellite monitor, something that could be easily ignored. Scientists in multiple countries stared at it, puzzled. It was not a signal they had seen before. Not like the usual chatter of satellites nor the random static of deep space. It was too organized, too precise. Someone or something was trying to communicate. At the observatory, the monitors flickered with strange patterns. Lines of light danced in ways that seemed deliberate. The team worked in shifts, decoding, analyzing, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. Hours turned into days. The atmosphere was tense, filled with a mix of excitement and fear. It was unlike anything they had encountered. Nobody had expected to find a message from beyond their world. As the signal continued, more experts were called in. Mathematicians, linguists, physicists, and engineers all pored over the data. It became clear that this was not random noise. The patterns had structure, rhythm, and repetition, almost like a language. And slowly, piece by piece, they began to understand the message. It was simple, yet profound. It was an invitation. A call to make contact, to open a door that humanity had only dreamed about. Governments were immediately informed. High-level meetings were convened, sometimes in secret, sometimes under public scrutiny. World leaders spoke cautiously in public, saying little, while behind closed doors discussions were heated. No one knew what to expect. Was it a trap, a test, or a genuine attempt at peace? The unknown hung over every decision like a shadow, but curiosity won over caution. Humanity's first true contact with an alien civilization was unfolding, and no one wanted to miss it. As the days passed, preparations began. Astronauts and scientists worked together to devise a plan for communication. Satellites were repositioned, probes recalibrated, and translation algorithms ran endlessly. Every breakthrough was met with cheers, every setback with frustration. The world watched, tense and hopeful, as humanity reached toward the stars, not knowing what they would find. Finally, the moment came. A craft appeared near the moon, unlike anything built by humans. Its shape was foreign but elegant, smooth and shimmering, reflecting sunlight in ways that made it seem almost alive. It hovered, quiet and imposing, as instruments on Earth scrambled to record every detail. People across the globe stared at the sky, some in awe, some in fear. This was the moment they had prepared for but never truly imagined. The craft opened channels of communication. It did not speak words at first. Instead, it emitted harmonious tones, patterns of light, and subtle pulses that danced across the night sky. Scientists worked frantically to translate it. Slowly, the tones began to form meaning. The beings inside the craft were not hostile. They introduced themselves as travelers from a distant system, observers of young civilizations. They spoke of curiosity, of learning, and of a desire to see whether Earth was ready to join a larger community of intelligent life. The world reacted in waves. Some celebrated, seeing the arrival as proof that humanity was not alone and that cooperation with other civilizations might be possible. Others were skeptical, warning that no one could truly know the intentions of such visitors. Rumors spread, fueled by fear and imagination, but also by genuine concern. Could these beings be trusted? Could humanity respond appropriately to the greatest event in its history? Behind the scenes, every major space agency and military organization became alert. The aliens seemed peaceful, but trust is hard-earned when stakes are this high. Secret. Plans were made, contingency measures drawn up. It was understood that the world could not afford mistakes, not with beings capable of technology far beyond anything humans had yet imagined. As the days turned into weeks, the aliens toured Earth, not physically but through messages, holograms, and demonstrations of their knowledge. They asked questions about human history, culture, and science. They observed patterns of human behavior, and in return shared glimpses of their own existence. Every exchange was carefully analyzed. Scientists noticed that while the messages were friendly, there was an undercurrent of expectation. The aliens seemed to be studying not only humanity's achievements but also its choices, its ethics, and its unity. A young astrophysicist noticed something unusual. While most of the world saw the interaction as a peaceful exchange, there were subtle patterns in the data that suggested the visitors were learning faster than anticipated. They were mapping Earth's technological footprint with precision, scanning energy outputs, observing communication networks, and even tracking strategic locations. Nothing aggressive, nothing threatening, yet it was undeniably thorough. Governments convened urgently. While they wanted to embrace this unprecedented opportunity, they could not ignore the possibility of risk. Humanity had built defenses over decades, hidden from public knowledge. Among the most impressive of these was a colossal warship, designed, in secret, meant to safeguard Earth from threats too advanced for conventional forces. The warship was a silent guardian, never revealed, its existence a carefully kept secret. It was not intended to be used unless the planet faced an existential threat. Yet now, its role seemed more important than ever. Even as diplomatic channels opened, discussions about the warship's readiness continued. Military strategists debated scenarios while scientists argued for continued cooperation. Every day brought new data, new discoveries, and new challenges. Humanity was learning from the visitors, and the visitors were learning from humanity. It was a delicate balance of curiosity and caution, a dance on the edge of the unknown. Public opinion shifted as news of the alien visit spread. People everywhere felt a mixture of excitement, fear, and hope. Children stared at the sky with wonder. Families gathered around news screens watching updates with wide eyes. Scientists gave interviews, careful to explain the discoveries without causing panic. Every broadcast emphasized the potential for peace, the importance of careful observation, and the wonder of this historical moment. The first weeks of contact passed with cautious optimism. The aliens' message remained clear. They sought to understand humanity, to gauge its readiness for interaction with the larger universe, and in doing so, humanity began to see itself in a new light. Differences between nations, arguments over politics, and minor conflicts seemed smaller in comparison to the enormity of the universe and the significance of this encounter. In quiet moments, scientists reflected on what this meant. The signal, the craft, the tone of the visitors, all pointed to the possibility that humanity was being tested, not through force, but through observation. Were humans capable of responding with intelligence, empathy, and unity? Could they rise above fear and suspicion to meet this extraordinary opportunity? It was a question that would define not only the present, but the future. The days that followed were filled with both mundane activity and extraordinary discovery. Laboratories hummed with activity as new technologies were shared, sometimes in encrypted or simplified forms. Astronomers tracked the alien craft's movements, noting every pattern and signal. Engineers studied energy transmissions that seemed impossible to replicate but fascinating to analyze. Every corner of the scientific community was engaged in a race to understand, to learn, and to prepare. By the end of the first month, a sense of cautious respect had formed. The aliens were patient observers, not intruders. They moved carefully, allowing humanity to demonstrate its character through choices, through behavior, and through restraint. And yet, beneath the surface, there was an unspoken understanding that this contact was not just a gift, but a challenge. Humanity was being measured, its readiness for the wider universe tested in ways that would leave lasting impact. And so, the story of first contact continued, not as a story of fear or conquest, but as a story of awakening. The signal that began, as a strange blip, had opened a door to possibilities beyond imagination. Humanity had taken its first step into a broader cosmic community, and in doing so, had begun to confront not only the universe, but itself. Every decision, every observation, every act of communication would shape what came next. The aliens had arrived and Earth had responded. It was a moment that would be remembered forever, not because of weapons or battles, but because for the first time, humanity had looked outward and met intelligence from beyond its world. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with wonder, risk, and promise. And in that uncertainty lay the heart of a story that was only beginning. The day the craft appeared near the moon, the world held its breath. From the moment it was first spotted, people everywhere stared at the sky with awe and disbelief. It was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Its surface shimmered in strange colors that seemed to shift depending on the angle of sunlight. It moved silently, gliding through space with a grace that made it seem almost alive. Every instrument tracking it detected energy patterns far beyond what human technology could produce. Scientists were amazed, while ordinary people were captivated by the sight. It was a moment of wonder, but also one of unease. The world watched as the craft hovered steadily in orbit, neither attacking nor retreating. Communications teams worked tirelessly, attempting to establish a connection. They did not know what language the visitors spoke, or even if they had words in the way humans did. The first transmissions came as patterns of light and sound, harmonic, tones that changed in rhythm and intensity. At first, the signals were incomprehensible, like a symphony played by an instrument humanity had never seen. But gradually, scientists began to recognize patterns, repetitions, and sequences that suggested intentional communication. It was not long before translators were able to decode the first messages. The aliens did not speak in words. They spoke in signals, and those signals carried meaning. They introduced themselves as travelers from a faraway system, explorers who had watched emerging civilizations across the galaxy. Their purpose, they explained, was to observe, to learn, and to determine whether humanity was ready for interaction with other intelligent life. The tone of their communication was calm, almost soothing, yet there was an unmistakable air of expectation. They were not here to attack, but they were here to judge. At first, there was a global sense of celebration. News broadcasts around the world shared the historic moment, showing images of the craft against the blackness of space. Children pointed at the sky in wonder. Schools held special lessons about the event, and families gathered around screens to watch the unfolding story. Social media exploded with speculation, awe, and excitement. For many, it was the realization of a dream that had existed for centuries, proof that humanity was not alone in the universe. But alongside excitement, there was caution. Governments and military agencies quickly realized that while the visitors had arrived peacefully, their technology was far beyond anything humans had developed. Every nation questioned the true intentions of the craft. Was it a test? Were the visitors trying to assess Earth's defenses? Or was it a genuine attempt at peaceful contact? The unknown created tension that simmered beneath the surface, even as public statements emphasized cooperation and hope. Scientists and astronauts were invited to the first formal communication session. They watched as the craft emitted pulses of light that formed shapes, colors, and patterns. Each pattern conveyed information, ideas about energy, mathematics, and concepts beyond human understanding. The visitors asked questions about Earth's history, its achievements, and its challenges. They did not ask about politics or wars in the usual way. Instead, they asked about humanity's capacity to cooperate, to solve problems, and to act responsibly. Every answer given was carefully considered, as though the craft could read not just words but intent. The more the scientists learned, the more extraordinary it seemed. The visitors shared glimpses of their own civilization. They spoke of systems where cooperation was more important than conflict, where knowledge was valued above conquest. They displayed technologies humans could barely imagine, energy sources that did not pollute, methods of communication that transcended distance. But they did not offer these gifts freely. Instead, they observed and waited, testing humanity's patience, intelligence, and wisdom. Behind the scenes, military leaders and strategists were working quietly. They did not speak of the alien visit publicly, but they were keenly aware that any interaction with a civilization this advanced carried risk. Plans were made, contingencies prepared, and technologies evaluated. Humanity had built defenses for threats far beyond conventional war, and while these weapons had never been deployed, they existed as a hidden assurance. Among these was the Titan-class warship, a massive vessel designed for extreme situations. Its existence was secret, unknown to the public, but it had been created for moments exactly like this. The aliens continued to observe, moving through space with an almost deliberate slowness. They did not approach Earth directly at first, instead, maintaining a position that allowed them to monitor human response. Their signals were precise, never ambiguous, yet their true intentions remained unclear. Scientists noticed patterns in their observations. The craft seemed to respond not just to spoken answers, but to actions, decisions, and even subtle shifts in human behavior. It was as if the visitors were trying to understand humanity in its entirety, not just its technology or knowledge, but its spirit. Public fascination grew. People speculated endlessly about the visitors' origins, their intentions, and what the future might hold. Documentaries and news segments filled screens, showing expert interviews, computer simulations, and animations of the craft. For the first time in history, humanity felt truly connected to something larger, something beyond Earth. There was a shared sense of pride, mixed with nervousness, as if the entire planet were holding its breath together. Despite the outward optimism, tension remained in private. Scientists and leaders noticed that the visitors' scans were incredibly thorough. They seemed to map energy flows, communication networks, and even subtle signals that humans had thought were secure. There was no aggression, but there was undeniable precision. Some interpreted this as curiosity. Others saw it as caution, or even judgment. Questions arose. Were humans ready to meet a civilization this advanced? Could humanity show unity when faced with the unknown? And if they failed, what might the consequences be? As days passed, small interactions deepened. The visitors shared simple demonstrations, floating orbs of energy, holographic displays of distant planets, and visual representations of concepts that stretched human understanding. They encouraged humans to explore, to ask questions, and to imagine possibilities. For the scientists, these moments were both thrilling and humbling. They realized that the craft was not only observing Earth, but also challenging humanity to grow. Families and ordinary citizens experienced this indirectly. People spoke of looking at the sky and feeling a sense of connection to something greater. Children sketched the craft, adults discussed what it might mean for the future, and communities came together to share thoughts and ideas. Even those who did not fully understand the science felt a sense of history in the making. Humanity had entered a new chapter, one that would define its place in the universe for generations to come. Behind the excitement, a subtle understanding emerged. The visitors were not just observing for information, they were testing humanity's character. Could humans act responsibly? Could they remain calm in the face of the unknown? Could they balance curiosity with caution? Every message, every pulse of light, every harmonic tone seemed to carry layers of meaning that challenged more than intellect. It challenged values, judgment, and self-awareness. In quiet offices and observatories, scientists reflected on what they were witnessing. This was not simply a technological encounter. It was a test of humanity's ability to think beyond fear, beyond self-interest, and beyond the limitations that had shaped civilization until now. Every observation, every calculation, every choice made during these weeks would contribute to the visitor's assessment. It was an extraordinary responsibility, one that carried profound significance. Then came the first clear display of alien intent. The craft shifted position, moving slightly closer to Earth, and emitted a series of structured signals. These were not questions, but demonstrations, patterns that illustrated understanding, control, and perspective. The visitors were showing humans what they were capable of observing and, perhaps, what humans might achieve if they worked together. It was both inspiring and sobering. Governments and agencies worked to interpret the signals, while also preparing contingency plans. The Titan-class warship remained a closely guarded secret, a silent assurance that humanity was not defenseless. The craft's appearance had sparked awe, curiosity, and hope, but the world had learned to measure hope with caution. Humanity's first interaction with alien life was more than a story of science or technology. It was a test of maturity, wisdom, and character. As the weeks continued, the craft's presence became a new normal. Life on Earth continued, but with a sense of being watched, evaluated, and understood on a scale never before imagined. People continued their daily routines, but every glance at the sky reminded them of something larger, something that challenged their perspective and imagination. Schools included lessons on the encounter, scientists shared their discoveries, and communities discussed what it meant to belong to a universe that was now undeniably populated by other intelligence. Through all of this, humanity began to change. People became more aware of the importance of cooperation, empathy, and foresight. The visitors' presence highlighted the fragility of conflict and the power of knowledge. Differences between nations seemed smaller when faced with the scale and sophistication of tea. As the alien craft hovered near the moon, humanity began to realize that fascination alone was not enough. Behind the calm surface of curiosity and awe, there was unease. Scientists and leaders noticed patterns in the alien signals that were precise and thorough, almost unnervingly so. While the public saw a peaceful exchange, those who had access to detailed data recognized that the visitors were not just observing, they were studying. Every communication, every movement, every energy reading was being recorded. In international space agencies, teams worked around the clock to interpret subtle shifts in the aliens' behavior. They discovered that the craft seemed to respond not only to questions and experiments but also to human behavior, sometimes anticipating reactions before they happened. The implication was chilling. These beings could analyze humanity in ways that were beyond comprehension. Were they here to teach or to test? Were their intentions truly peaceful, or was there something hidden beneath their calm, deliberate observation? While the scientists debated, military officials quietly prepared contingency plans. They did not speak publicly, and no one outside. The inner circle knew that humanity had weapons designed for situations exactly like this. Among them was a secret project, one that had been decades in the making, a Titan-class warship, hidden from public view. Its existence had never been announced. It was built in secret underground facilities, its technology far surpassing conventional human design. The warship was a guardian, an insurance policy against threats that humanity might one day face beyond Earth. And now it seemed the moment of its relevance might be approaching. As the alien craft continued its orbit, subtle signs suggested that the visitors were evaluating the readiness of human civilization. They were not aggressive, but their observation was penetrating. Scientists noticed that their signals scanned everything from global energy consumption to population behavior patterns. They could see the way humans made decisions under stress, how they cooperated or competed, and even how they responded emotionally to new information. Humanity was being measured, not by force, but by intelligence, restraint, and cohesion. Despite the tense atmosphere behind the scenes, public interactions with the craft continued smoothly. News channels broadcast images of the shimmering vessel against the backdrop of space. Children in schools learned about the visitors and speculated about their origins. People around the world looked at the sky with wonder, imagining the possibilities of life beyond Earth. Social media was filled with theories, artwork, and speculation, as ordinary people participated in a story that was larger than anything they had ever known. Yet in secret, governments worried. What if the visitors' peaceful demeanor masked intentions that humans could not yet comprehend? Some argued that humanity should attempt more aggressive communication, perhaps showing strength to prevent misjudgment. Others warned that any sign of hostility could trigger conflict unnecessarily. The debate raged quietly, with scientists advocating patience and study, while military strategists prepared for every conceivable scenario. The Titan-class warship, code-named Aegis I, became the central point of these discussions. Engineers and commanders reviewed its systems, confirming its readiness. It was massive, powerful, and unlike any other human creation. Its presence was unknown to the public, yet its activation protocol was clear. If humanity faced a threat it could not withstand, Aegis 1 would rise, bringing the full force of human ingenuity to protect the planet. For decades, it had been dormant, a silent guardian. And now, as the alien craft observed and measured humanity, it existed not as a threat but as a reminder of what humans could achieve when united. Meanwhile, scientists working closely with the alien signals discovered something remarkable. The craft had an intelligence that was not just advanced but adaptive. It could analyze and learn, making adjustments to its communication and movements based on humanity's responses. This suggested a civilization capable of deep understanding and strategic thinking. Observers realized that this was not a simple meeting of species. It was a complex interaction between minds, each seeking to understand the other while revealing only what was intended. Despite these revelations, the aliens remained patient. Their presence was deliberate and slow, giving humanity the space to respond and demonstrate its capabilities. They were not aggressive, yet their silence carried weight. Every decision made by humans was noted, every collective action observed. In the quiet of control rooms and observatories, scientists marveled at the precision of their visitors. It was both inspiring and humbling, a reminder of how much humanity had yet to learn. As tensions simmered quietly behind closed doors, the public continued to engage with the encounter with a mix of awe and excitement. People across the globe were united in their fascination, as if the presence of the craft reminded them of something larger than daily struggles or political disputes. Schools and universities held special programs on the event, teaching students about astronomy, communication, and critical thinking. Families shared stories and speculations, creating a sense of shared experience and wonder. However, in private, discussions were more serious. Military analysts studied the patterns of the craft's signals, trying to anticipate possible outcomes. They considered what humanity might do if the visitors were not entirely benevolent. Even though there was no evidence of hostility, the unknown possibilities could not be ignored. The Titan-class warship Aegis 1 became central to these preparations. Engineers reviewed its systems, ensured its activation protocols were flawless, and simulated scenarios in which it would need to respond. The scientists continued their analysis of the alien behavior, discovering something even more intriguing. The craft seemed to be evaluating not only technology, but morality and decision-making. It observed conflicts, resource management, and problem-solving efforts. It seemed to measure humanity's ability to cooperate, adapt, and act responsibly. It was as if the visitors were asking, without words, whether humans could handle the responsibility of being part of a larger universe. As time went on, subtle events revealed the craft's precision. When humans made choices that demonstrated cooperation or ingenuity, the visitors' signals seemed to adjust, almost as if acknowledging understanding. When mistakes were made, they paused or shifted slightly, waiting for correction. It became clear that humanity was being measured not just in knowledge, but in the application of wisdom, ethics, and foresight. At the same time, technological exchanges began to appear, though cautiously. Small hints of advanced physics and energy manipulation were revealed in ways humans could analyze and attempt to replicate. These were not gifts but lessons, carefully tailored to challenge understanding while maintaining safety. Scientists and engineers marveled at the possibilities, working tirelessly to interpret and implement what could be understood. It was a slow, deliberate education, one that required patience and discipline. As weeks turned into months, the alien craft became both a symbol and a mirror. It reflected humanity's strengths and weaknesses. It demonstrated the possibilities of cooperation and ingenuity, while also exposing the challenges of mistrust and fear. People began to realize that the encounter was about more than technology. It was about growth, responsibility, and the potential to rise above old patterns. Humanity was being held accountable, not by force but by observation and expectation. Meanwhile, the Titan-class warship remained ready, a silent guardian beneath the surface of human awareness. It was not part of public discourse, yet it represented a preparedness that contrasted with the alien patience. It was a reminder that while curiosity and learning were essential, strength and readiness were equally important. The balance of these forces, the peaceful study of the craft and the hidden might of Aegis I, defined humanity's stance in the presence of something far greater than itself. In quiet moments, scientists reflected on the enormity of what was unfolding. This was not a simple meeting. It was a transformative experience. Humanity was being observed, measured, and challenged in ways that required not just intelligence, but self-awareness. The alien craft served as both teacher and judge, demonstrating that true advancement required more than knowledge. It required responsibility, ethics, and foresight. Public interest continued to grow, yet the sense of suspense remained. Humanity had glimpsed a level of intelligence that was far beyond its own. Schools and universities emphasized critical thinking, problem-solving, and cooperation. Ordinary citizens shared their experiences and ideas, often comparing notes and theories about what the visitors wanted and why. The planet seemed more connected, as though the presence of the craft reminded everyone of a shared identity and a common destiny. Behind the scenes, the subtle tension increased. Leaders and military strategists remained vigilant, ensuring that plans were in place should the visitors' intentions change. The Titan-class warship, though silent, stood ready, its systems prepared to respond to any threat. Humanity's secret preparations were a quiet counterbalance to the visible curiosity and collaboration, a reminder that even in the pursuit of understanding, readiness was essential. And so, life continued in a delicate balance. The alien craft hovered near the moon, observing and interacting with humanity. People marveled. The calm that had settled over Earth for months was suddenly broken. Deep space sensors picked up enormous movements far beyond the orbit of Neptune. At first, scientists assumed it was natural phenomena, distant comets, asteroids, or remnants of planetary formation. But as the data streamed in, it became clear that this was something else entirely. The signals were too structured, too precise, too organized to be random. Something massive was approaching, something that did not belong to the natural patterns of the solar system. In control rooms across the world, alarms blinked and technicians scrambled. Government officials were called into emergency meetings. There was no panic in the official statements, but behind closed doors, tension ran high. For the first time, humanity realized that the alien craft near the moon might not be acting alone. Its presence had been a prelude, a signal, a way to measure Earth before something far larger arrived. The alien ambassadors who had once appeared calm and patient now seemed different. Their signals became sharper, more deliberate, and at times, harder to decode. Scientists noticed that the tone of their communication had changed slightly, a subtle hint of urgency, a quiet reminder that observation was not simply passive. Something was coming and Earth needed to be prepared. Military forces worldwide were quietly mobilized, though the public remained largely unaware. Nations shared intelligence discreetly, recognizing that the approaching phenomenon could not be handled alone. Space agencies and defense departments coordinated like never before, analyzing trajectories, energy signatures, and potential strategies. The presence of the Titan-class warship, Aegis I, suddenly became more than a precaution. It became a symbol of hope and humanity's potential to defend itself against threats that exceeded imagination. In laboratories and observatories, scientists worked day and night. Every signal from the alien craft was analyzed, every movement in the distant solar system tracked. They discovered that the approaching objects were not random. They were organized, structured, and moving with a purpose. It was not a meteor shower, not a natural anomaly. It was an armada, a fleet unlike anything humans had ever imagined. The implications were staggering. Humanity had never faced such a possibility of confrontation in all of its history. While the world remained outwardly calm, the atmosphere behind the scenes was electric with urgency. Leaders debated strategies. Some argued for communication, hoping to reason with the fleet before any action was necessary. Others warned that any delay could be dangerous, emphasizing that preparation was essential. The balance between diplomacy and readiness became the defining focus of the moment. Every decision, every word, every calculation mattered. The alien craft near the moon, the ambassadors humanity had come to trust and observe, now became a window into the larger threat. It was as though they had brought Earth's attention to the universe, showing both possibility and danger. Scientists realized that the craft had been teaching humanity patience, observation, and intelligence, but now the lessons had evolved. Observation alone would not be enough. Humanity would need action, decisiveness, and courage. At this critical moment, the Titan-class warship began to move from its hidden location. Years of preparation, secrecy, and innovation were about to be revealed. The warship was massive, larger than any conventional ship, and designed to operate in space with systems unmatched by anything humanity had built before. As it rose from beneath the Earth's surface, powerful sensors activated, scanning the solar system, measuring the incoming fleet. It was not an act of aggression, but a display of readiness, of capability, of human ingenuity. As Aegis I reached orbit, scientists and military officials monitored its systems with a mix of awe and relief. The warship was a technological marvel, a testament to decades of research and collaboration. Its energy shields, propulsion systems, and defensive measures were beyond anything previously known. It was not a weapon to conquer, but a safeguard, a promise that humanity could protect itself if the unknown turned hostile. Meanwhile, the approaching fleet grew larger in the sensors. Individual ships were massive, moving in formations that suggested discipline and intelligence. Scientists calculated trajectories, energy outputs, and potential consequences of encounters. Every aspect of the fleet indicated that it was not a casual expedition. It had a purpose, and Earth was at the center of it. The tension was palpable. Humanity had never faced such an organized, deliberate, and technologically advanced presence. Amid the growing concern, the alien ambassadors near the moon communicated with Earth more directly. Their tones, previously calm and harmonious, now carried weight. The messages were clear. The fleet was here to assess, to judge, and perhaps to determine whether Earth should continue to exist in its current state. The ambassadors did not issue threats, but the implication was undeniable. Humanity was being tested in ways more profound than anyone could have imagined. Scientists and leaders realized that this moment was unprecedented. Never before had humanity been evaluated on such a scale, not by a single civilization, but by an entire armada. Every decision, every action, every display of readiness mattered. The question was no longer whether humanity could communicate or understand. It was whether humanity could act with unity, intelligence, and courage. As the alien fleet approached the outer planets, the world's military systems went online, in unison. Satellites, ground-based defenses, and secret installations coordinated silently, preparing for contingencies. Humanity had learned patience, observation, and cooperation during the months of contact with the ambassadors, but now those lessons were being tested. The Titan-class warship stood at the ready, a beacon of human achievement and preparedness. The approaching fleet sent signals of its own, not words but energy pulses and visual patterns that humanity could detect. Scientists interpreted these as scanning for capabilities, analyzing strength, and assessing behavior. The enormity of what was happening was difficult to comprehend. Humanity was facing a force capable of unimaginable destruction, yet there was still hope. The preparedness, ingenuity, and restraint of humans were being noticed and perhaps valued. As the fleet reached the edge of the inner solar system, the tension on Earth became almost tangible. People looked at the sky in wonder, unaware of the full scale of the approach. Scientists, engineers, and military leaders worked tirelessly, calculating every possibility, ensuring that systems were ready for any eventuality. The Titan-class warship maintained its silent vigil, scanning the fleet, analyzing energy signatures, and preparing to act if necessary. Despite the gravity of the situation, humanity continued to demonstrate unity. Countries shared data, collaborated on strategies, and coordinated efforts to understand and respond to the unknown. The alien ambassadors, once observers, now became intermediaries, their signals helping to communicate humanity's readiness, intelligence, and restraint. Every gesture, every calculation, every careful movement mattered more than ever. Finally, the approaching fleet was visible in more detail. Massive, structured, and organized, it was unlike any human imagination of space travel. Its ships moved with precision, their energy fields gleaming across the dark canvas of space. Humanity realized that the scale of this encounter was far beyond any single nation, and that cooperation was the only path to survival. The Titan-class warship, Aegis I, maintained its position, a silent guardian and symbol of readiness. The alien ambassadors conveyed one final deliberate message before the fleet reached the inner planets. Their tone was not threatening but firm. Earth had demonstrated intelligence, patience, and restraint. The next moments would determine whether humanity could act decisively in the face of overwhelming unknowns. There was no explicit warning, but the message was clear. This was a test, and humanity's response would define its future. As the fleet drew closer, Earth systems monitored every detail. Satellites captured images, instruments measured energy outputs, and scientists interpreted patterns that were difficult to understand. The world held its breath, balancing awe, fear, and hope. Humanity had been watched, studied, and evaluated for months, but now the judgment was approaching. Every choice, every calculation, and every display of readiness could have consequences beyond imagination. In the quiet of underground facilities and observatories, scientists reflected on the journey so far. Humanity had learned lessons about patience, intelligence, and cooperation. The alien craft near the moon had served as both teacher and observer. The Titan-class warship represented readiness and achievement. Now, all of these elements converged, preparing the world for a moment that would define the place of humanity in the universe. And so, as the fleet reached the outer planets, the quiet tension of observation transformed into the potential for direct encounter. Humanity was ready, not because it had weapons alone, but because it had learned, adapted, and acted with unity and intelligence. The lessons of patience, careful observation, and restraint would guide the next steps. The approaching fleet, the alien ambassadors and the Titan-class warship together set the stage for a confrontation that was not yet a battle, but a test of readiness, courage, and wisdom. Humanity had come far since the first signal was detected. It had faced the unknown with intelligence. The silence of space was broken by a quiet hum, a vibration that humans could not feel but instruments detected clearly. The approaching fleet was now within the inner solar system, moving steadily and deliberately. Sensors picked up energy signatures, far beyond anything Earth had ever produced. The scale and coordination of the fleet were awe-inspiring, and yet there was no aggression, at least not yet. It was a test, an observation of readiness, and humanity had little time to consider what came next. In underground command centers and secret space stations, scientists, engineers, and military officials gathered. Monitors displayed the massive formation of the fleet, with every ship calculated, every trajectory tracked. Decisions that had been planned for decades, quietly and secretly, were about to be put to the test. The Titan-class warship, Aegis I, had been prepared for this very moment, and now it would show the world its true purpose. As the fleet drew closer, the alien ambassadors near the moon sent precise signals to Earth. Their tones, once harmonious, now carried a subtle intensity. The messages were not threats, but they were clear. The fleet was assessing, measuring, and judging Earth's capabilities. Scientists interpreted these signals with urgency. Every calculation, every energy output, and every human action was being observed. Humanity was no longer a passive observer in the universe. It was on display. Finally, the moment arrived. Deep, beneath the Arctic ice, the hidden hangar doors of the Titan-class warship began to open. It was a marvel of human engineering, far larger and more powerful than any other vessel ever built. Slowly, it ascended, breaking through the surface of the ice. its hull gleaming in the pale light of the polar dawn. The world's instruments detected its movement, and scientists realized that for the first time, humanity had revealed its ultimate strength. Aegis 1 emerged into the sky, its systems activating in perfect synchronization. Powerful energy shields flared to life, forming protective barriers around the ship. Sensors scanned the approaching fleet with precision, mapping every vessel and monitoring every energy signature. It was not just a ship, it was a statement. Humanity had prepared, and now it could respond to the unknown with intelligence and power. As Aegis 1 reached orbit, the alien ambassadors observed from the moon. Their signals shifted, reflecting surprise, curiosity, and careful calculation. They had expected humanity to be intelligent, patient, and capable, but perhaps they had not anticipated the scale of human preparation. For the first time, Earth's presence in the solar system commanded attention in a way that no one could ignore. The approaching fleet paused, as if sensing the activation of the warship. Scientists monitored the signals and energy readings with bated breath. The ships were massive, structured, and highly organized, but they no longer moved with unchecked confidence. The balance had shifted. Humanity had demonstrated that it was not defenseless, that it could respond to the unknown with precision and intelligence. From mission control, scientists and engineers observed the interactions between the Titan-class warship and the fleet. Every movement, every scan, every calculated adjustment in the ship's system sent a clear message. Earth was ready. It was not a threat for the sake of destruction, but it was a warning that any misjudgment could have consequences. For the first time, the ambassadors' signals were tinged with respect. They had come to observe, and now they understood that humanity had the capability to defend itself and to act decisively, if required. People around the world felt a mixture of awe and relief, even if they could not fully understand the events unfolding in space. News channels broadcast carefully curated images and statements, hinting at progress and preparation while maintaining public calm. Children and adults alike looked up at the sky, imagining the massive warship now in orbit, silently guarding the planet. Humanity's ingenuity, its patience, and its readiness were now visible, even if only through instruments and carefully controlled information. The alien fleet, massive and deliberate, began to adjust its formation. It was clear that the presence of the Titan-class warship had caused them to reconsider their approach. There was no aggression, no immediate attack, but every ship's movement now reflected calculation and caution. The ambassadors' messages became even more deliberate, communicating the significance of the display. Humans could feel even indirectly that their actions were being measured and respected. Scientists and military officials worked tirelessly to maintain readiness. Every sensor, every calculation, and every energy output was carefully monitored. Engineers ran simulations to predict the fleet's next movements, while military strategists reviewed contingency plans. It was a tense, delicate balance. Humanity had not sought conflict, yet the presence of the warship ensured that Earth could act decisively if necessary. Meanwhile, the alien ambassadors continued their silent observation. Their craft near the moon now emitted patterns that suggested recognition and acknowledgement. They were not hostile, but they had clearly understood the message humanity had sent. Earth was capable, prepared, and not to be underestimated. For months, the ambassadors had tested patience, observation, and intelligence. Now, they were observing courage, readiness, and unity. The activation of the Titan-class warship also brought a deeper awareness to the scientists and engineers involved. They realized that humanity had passed the initial phase of observation. Patience and curiosity had been necessary, but they were no longer sufficient. Earth had to demonstrate readiness, coordination, and the ability to act decisively. The warship's presence sent a signal not only to the alien fleet, but also to humanity itself. Preparedness was a measure of responsibility. As hours passed, subtle interactions occurred between the fleet and the warship. Energy pulses, calculated scans, and silent maneuvers created a dialogue of observation and understanding. No weapons were fired, No destructive action was taken, but the communication was clear. The fleet recognized the power and precision of humanity's creation. The ambassador's signals reflected a quiet acknowledgement. Earth had risen to the OST challenge. In cities around the world, people sensed something extraordinary, even without understanding the technical details. The news, carefully managed, spoke of progress and cooperation. Communities felt a shared sense of achievement and pride. Humanity was facing the unknown, not with fear, but with intelligence, patience, and readiness. It was a lesson that extended beyond technology and into the very character of the species. Deep inside mission control, scientists analyzed the interactions with fascination. They noted that the alien fleet's adjustments were not signs of aggression, but of recognition. Earth had demonstrated its capability, and in doing so, had earned a place in the larger dialogue of the universe. The Titan-class warship was not merely a machine. It was a statement of unity, ingenuity, and foresight. The ambassador's messages became clearer and more deliberate. They were no longer testing patience or curiosity. They were acknowledging humanity's readiness. The warship had proven its purpose. It had risen not to fight, but to communicate strength, capability, and intelligence. For the first time, the alien observers recognized that Earth was a civilization capable of acting with responsibility, courage, and preparation. Humanity realized that the presence of the fleet, combined with the warship, had transformed the encounter. The test was no longer theoretical. It had become tangible, a living demonstration of Earth's potential. Scientists reflected on the journey from the first signal months ago to this moment. Humanity had learned patience, observation, intelligence, and finally, readiness. Every step had prepared them for this moment, where knowledge, unity, and courage intersected. As the fleet adjusted its course, moving slightly away from direct approach, scientists and officials understood the significance. The ambassador's observation had shifted from evaluation to acknowledgement. Earth had passed another phase of its trial, demonstrating not only the capability to defend itself, but also the intelligence to act responsibly. The Titan-class warship had served its purpose without firing a single shot, its presence alone reshaping the dynamics of the encounter. In the days that followed, scientists continued to study the subtle interactions. The alien fleet remained near the outer planets, organized and deliberate, yet no longer threatening. The ambassador's craft near the moon maintained its observation, but the tone of its signals suggested respect rather than judgment. Humanity had shown that it could rise to challenges, act with unity, and demonstrate strength without unnecessary aggression. The activation of the Titan-class warship had changed the perception of humanity, both within the solar system and among the observing aliens. It was a reminder that preparedness, intelligence, and restraint could achieve what confrontation alone could not. Humans had faced the unknown and responded with courage, ingenuity, and responsibility. The experience transformed humanity's understanding of its place in the universe, the value of readiness, and the importance of unity in the face of uncertainty. And so, the stage was set for the next chapter. The alien fleet had been observed, assessed, and adjusted in response to humanity's actions. The Titan-class warship had demonstrated capability and purpose. Humanity had learned lessons that extended far beyond technology, lessons about courage, responsibility, and the power of. The silence of space seemed heavier than ever. After weeks of observation, preparation, and subtle interaction, humanity now faced the moment of reckoning. The alien fleet, massive and precise, had paused its advance. Sensors from the Titan-class warship Aegis I confirmed that every ship in the fleet was positioned strategically, as though waiting for a signal. Humanity had demonstrated patience, intelligence, and readiness, but now it was time to see how the universe would respond. Inside mission control, scientists, engineers, and military officials worked tirelessly. Every screen displayed energy, readings, trajectories, and signal patterns from the fleet. Calculations were constant, adjustments meticulous. Humanity had come far since the first mysterious craft appeared near the moon. But the stakes had never been higher. Every choice mattered. Every signal sent or received could alter the outcome. The alien ambassadors near the moon had changed their communication style. What had once been abstract patterns of light and sound now carried clarity and purpose. It was as if the visitors were preparing humanity for a final understanding, a moment when observation would transform into judgment, acknowledgement, and perhaps collaboration. The Titan-class warship hovered silently in orbit, a gleaming symbol of human ingenuity. Its shields hummed softly, its sensors scanning the alien fleet. Engineers monitored its systems with precision. The ship's size and power were unmatched, but it was not built for aggression alone. It was a statement. Aegis 1 represented readiness, intelligence, and the ability to act decisively when necessary. The warship was a message to the universe. Humanity had arrived and it was capable. For ordinary people on Earth, life continued under the shadow of the unknown. Children looked at the sky with wonder. Adults shared stories of the encounter, and communities felt a quiet, shared excitement. No one fully understood the scale of what was unfolding, but instinctively, people knew that humanity was part of something extraordinary. The world had changed. The first signal from the alien craft had opened a chapter of history that would define generations. Then, signals arrived from the alien fleet. They were not threats, not demands, not attacks. They were a form of communication that conveyed recognition. Scientists studied the patterns carefully, translating energy pulses and light sequences into meaningful data. The fleet's movements reflected calculation, discipline, and a subtle acknowledgement of Earth's readiness. Humanity had passed the first tests of patience, observation, and preparation. Now the universe was responding. The alien ambassadors sent a signal that was larger and more complex than any before. It created a pattern across space that resonated with Aegis 1's systems. The warship responded, not with weapons, but with a synchronization of energy pulses and communication sequences. It was a conversation without words, a dialogue of technology, intelligence, and intent. Humanity realized that this was the culmination of months of observation. The fleet was communicating, and the response depended on the readiness, unity, and courage of Earth. For the first time, the alien fleet's purpose became clearer. They had not arrived to attack, nor merely to test. They were offering an opportunity, a chance for humanity to prove that it could rise to the standards of a civilization capable of joining a larger cosmic community. The test had never been about destruction. It had been about patience, intelligence, ethics, cooperation, and readiness. Humanity had been measured not for power alone, but for wisdom. Aegis 1 became the centerpiece of this demonstration. Its systems harmonized with signals from the alien fleet, creating patterns of energy that were simultaneously protective and communicative. Scientists watched with awe as the warship's advanced technology formed a dialogue with the fleet. The alien signals reflected understanding and, gradually, what seemed like admiration. Humanity had achieved what many had thought impossible, a communication that transcended language, culture, and even species. In control rooms, the human operators felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The fleet had recognized that Earth could respond intelligently and responsibly. For months, humanity had been tested on patience, observation, restraint, and ingenuity. Now, the final demonstration was underway. Proof that humans could act with unity, courage, and readiness without resorting to unnecessary aggression. The alien fleet adjusted its formation subtly, almost ceremoniously. The ambassadors near the moon emitted a pulse of light so precise that instruments on Earth detected it as a harmonization with the Titan-class warship. Humanity realized that the fleet was no longer evaluating, but acknowledging. This acknowledgement was more than data. It was recognition, a silent but profound statement that Earth had passed the trial. Every person on Earth felt the change, even if indirectly. Reports showed subtle shifts in the behavior of the atmosphere and electromagnetic fields around the planet, all of which the aliens were capable of observing. Scientists explained that these were signs of interaction between the fleet and the warship. The message was clear. Humanity's presence, intelligence, and readiness were now part of a larger understanding that extended beyond the solar system. The ambassador's final series of signals conveyed more than recognition. They conveyed partnership. It was subtle, yet unmistakable. Earth had demonstrated that it could observe, learn, prepare, and act with intelligence. The fleet's movements reflected a willingness to coexist, to communicate, and perhaps to share knowledge. Humanity had passed not just a test but a transformation. Inside Mission Control, the atmosphere was a mix of relief, awe, and excitement. Engineers monitored Aegis I's systems, confirming that every response from the fleet was peaceful and deliberate. Scientists studied the patterns, realizing that humanity had achieved a milestone, the first successful demonstration of readiness and intelligence to an interstellar presence. The implications were staggering. Humanity was no longer isolated. The universe had noticed, observed, and acknowledged Earth as capable of intelligent, responsible interaction. The Titan-class warship continued to maintain its presence, a silent guardian, a symbol of human achievement. Its activation had not been for war, but for demonstration, proof that humanity could meet the standards of the unknown, respond with preparation, and act decisively without aggression. It was a moment that combined technology, strategy, and wisdom in a way that transcended mere survival. People around the world felt a subtle shift in perception. News outlets reported on extraordinary developments without revealing technical details, but even the simplest reports carried a sense of wonder and pride. Humanity had faced the unknown, and the unknown had recognized its intelligence, restraint, and courage. Communities celebrated quietly, schools taught lessons on cooperation and critical thinking, and ordinary citizens looked at the sky with a renewed sense of connection. The alien ambassador's craft near the moon now moved slightly, closer to Earth as if inviting a new form of interaction. Signals were no longer tests but gestures of communication. Scientists interpreted these patterns as opportunities for dialogue and exchange. Humanity had passed the trial, and now doors were opening to a larger universe. It was a first contact, not defined by conflict but by intelligence, readiness, and mutual recognition. Aegis I remained in orbit, its presence both protective and symbolic. The warship had demonstrated the capability of humanity to act responsibly in the face of unknown power. It had maintained balance, readiness, and intelligence without resorting to violence. This demonstration had been more important than any battle. It had proven that humanity could rise to the challenges of the wider universe with wisdom and courage. In quiet corners of Earth, scientists, engineers, and ordinary citizens reflected on what had been achieved. The months of observation, patience, and preparation had culminated in a moment of profound significance. Humanity had faced the unknown, responded intelligently, and been recognized. The lessons of restraint, intelligence, and readiness would resonate for generations. The alien fleet gradually adjusted its position, moving slightly outward, signaling that the immediate evaluation had concluded. The ambassador's craft near the moon hovered gracefully, a silent reminder of observation, learning, and acknowledgement. Humanity had achieved something extraordinary. It had entered into a relationship with an interstellar presence without conflict, purely through intelligence, patience, and preparedness. As the sun set over Earth, the Titan-class warship continued to orbit silently. Sensors monitored the fleet and the ambassador's craft, ensuring readiness for any future interaction. But for the first time in history, humans could look at the sky not with fear, but with pride and hope. Humanity had passed a trial that extended beyond technology and defense. It had demonstrated wisdom, unity, and responsibility. This was the beginning of a new chapter. The fleet's acknowledgement meant that Earth had entered the wider conversation of the universe. The alien ambassadors had observed, evaluated, and recognized humanity's capabilities. The Titan-class warship, once a secret, now served as a symbol of achievement, preparedness, and the potential to act with courage and intelligence. As night fell across the planet, people felt the significance of what had occurred. Humanity had faced the unknown and proven its readiness. The sky was no longer simply a mystery, it was a realm of possibility, connects